The show has not started earlier. I just had something I wanted to stream about, and I apologize for my voice. I am extremely sick after my holiday vacation. But Bernie Sanders has an amazing plan, and I wanted to talk to you about it. So what he wants to do is on January 15th, just a little bit before the inauguration, when Donald Trump formally becomes president, he wants to organize a national day of rallies to get people united against Trump in advance to protect the ACA. That's going to be one of the first things that Trump and the Republicans try to do when they finally take power of every branch of government will be to destroy the ACA and thus eventually deprive literally 30 or more million Americans from the health insurance that they now finally have. And so what he did was he sent out a letter to others in the Democratic caucus trying to get them to get involved in leading these rallies. And what I love about that is that he's going to do it himself regardless. But he is trying to show the other, generally spineless Democrats, including Democratic leaders in the party, how it's done. And he's showing what an actual leader is. Now, being a leader has absolutely nothing to do with whatever your title is. It doesn't matter if Chuck Schumer made him this such and such whip or head of whatever outreach committee. It's what you actually do. It's the actions you take. And so he's doing that. And so regardless of whether any of the other Democrats come on board and actually start to help him out in this fight on the 15th, this is exactly what needs to happen. But not just on the 15th. I really hope that this is just the first of many national days of rallies that Bernie Sanders does to keep progressives around the country energized around some of the most important issues that they're going to need to be active in once Trump becomes president and once the GOP has effectively unchecked power. We need to do whatever we can to scare them into doing the right thing, the Democrats, and not doing the wrong thing, the Republicans. And so here's the thing. I think that this is exactly what Bernie should be doing. Other Democrats should be doing it as well. I want Bernie to continue to be out there because it's a great way to keep him active in advance of potentially running again in 4 years. And it'll keep the media focused on him and make them actually have to fucking cover him in a way that they didn't a year ago. And so that's awesome. But what I wonder is, he's going to try to get people engaged about the ACA and get them fighting. But what is actually going to keep progressives from falling to apathy, to keep them engaged? What are the issues that's going to keep them fighting? And so I've been thinking about that. Now, look, overall, I can be a bit of a pessimist about some things, and I do worry that there are going to be some people who got engaged in the process, perhaps brought in by their admiration for Bernie Sanders, that now that the election is over, might want to just go back to their regular lives, that things are going to become difficult. And, it's really hard to fight when there's not, a date set in your mind, the election where things can happen. And it's fights that can potentially go on for years. And for a lot of people, that can be really disheartening. And overall, it is far easier to stay engaged in politics during the election than it is during the off years, when the actual work of changing the country and changing the world is actually done. During the election, you have debates and you have the media's focusing on it a lot more. There's all these names rising and falling in the polls. You can sort of see day by day what's actually happening and what's affecting politics. You can be for certain candidates or parties and against others. And that's relatively easy, actually fighting in the long term to get, a constitutional amendment passed, perhaps, if you're a member of Wolfpack. Or, fighting to stop something terrible from happening. If you are in North Dakota protesting against the construction of the Dakota Access Pipeline, that's extremely difficult because it could go on forever, conceivably. But I do have hope because, of course, those two examples I just gave are examples of people doing this, regardless of an election, not because of an election. The people that were out there in North Dakota months before anybody in the media ever covered it, who were out there for literally months and months at a time, showed that there are people who are willing to fight for what they believe in. They're willing to do whatever it takes, even put their lives on the line in a lot of cases. I mean, those people who've been going door to door trying to change things to pave the way for a constitutional amendment to get money out of politics, they were doing that when there was no news coverage of it, back before a single state had signed on, when there was no reason to believe that we could get people to actually do this. Now, thankfully, there's been an entire series of successes that has helped to inspire them and others to do it, but they were doing that hard work when no one was focusing on it. And that's what gives me hope. Now, what I really hope, though, is that there's a number of different issues that are going to keep people from falling to apathy or focusing just on the partisan, like, who's going to lead the party stuff. Obviously, that stuff is important, but that is one very small slice of the actual running of the country. And so I'm going to say that the two things that I think are going to keep me engaged. I mean, obviously, it's my job. I can't exactly stop paying attention. But even if it wasn't my job, the two things that are most important to me, the first is obviously climate change. I mean, I said during the primary and during the general election that is enough for me to vote for a candidate based on it. This is about the continuation of our species. This is about the continuation of our civilization, our ability to live the way we've grown accustomed to. And it is being threatened. Now, we might not see the most harsh examples of how it's being threatened for a decade or 3 or 5, but that change is coming. And I am extremely worried about what's going to happen under Donald Trump and under the Republicans. Their ability to take back the environmental regulations that President Obama was able to pass, not just the carbon, but also the methane emission standards and things like that. Potentially getting rid of the CAF standards that have made our cars relatively competitive in terms of MPG with the cars of other countries. I mean, that stuff is so goddamn important. If he takes us out of the Paris Climate Accord, that's fucking so goddamn important. And it did not get the focus that it needed during the primary. It didn't get the focus that it needed during the general election. There were candidates who were willing to talk about it, but the media was so goddamn asleep at the wheel. I don't understand how the continuation of the fucking species you're a member of isn't enough to get people engaged in fucking politics. Now, I'm hoping, since apparently next year there's going to be a sequel to An Inconvenient Truth, perhaps, since it's in popular culture now, people will care about the future of their planet. But that is going to be enough for me. If no other issue was going to be determined over the next year, the next 4 years, that would be enough for me. I hope it's enough for you. Anyway, sorry. I get mad when I think about the planet being destroyed. The other issue is taxes. Now, that is far less sexy. I understand that. I'm sorry if this bores you. But in the same way that Jenks says, that you have to deal with the money in politics before you can deal with any of the actual policies, I think that taxes have as large of a sort of just a ripple effect throughout every other thing that we talk about. So in a little bit, the Young Turks is going to go live. They're going to talk in the first hour and the second hour about any number of different issues. Social issues, I know that they're going to talk about the food stamp story, incredibly important, all these things. Every single one of those issues is going to be determined by the federal budget and by state budgets. And the tax reforms that the Republicans are about to make, the Republicans and Trump, since they largely agree on this, has the potential to absolutely devastate, perhaps decimate, the federal revenue that'll be generated over the next few years, and certainly in the long run. And I talked during the primary, I talked during the general election about how goddamn important it was that we not allow them to destroy the federal tax base, because it has ripple effects throughout every other policy. If you're talking about environmental regulation, if you're talking about infrastructure renovation and renewal, making sure that it's maintained, if you're talking about subsidies for alternative forms of energy, if you're talking about the education system, TANF and all that stuff, all of it is determined by the money that we have, because we know that the Defense Department is not going to be cut. We know that. And so what are the policies that are going to be cut when corporate taxes are cut to a third of what they are right now, when we're working our asses off to give the richest 1% and 0.1% of this country the biggest tax cuts that they never would have dreamed of during the George W. Bush years? What's going to be cut? It's not going to be the Department of Defense. It's going to be food stamps, and it's going to be other issues like that, issues that they've just been waiting to cut. And so we have to do whatever we can to either stop those tax cuts from going through, or at least make sure that they are as small as possible. Because if we don't do that, then we're going to lose on literally dozens, possibly hundreds of other issues, and we may never even know about it, because we'll lose at fucking budgeting time. Okay, and if you've been paying attention to politics for a long time, you know how goddamn difficult it is to ever raise taxes in this country, since people have such an ass-backwards view of taxation. And so if they cut it now, it might be virtually impossible for the rest of our lifetime to ever get taxes up to where they need to be. And so these are two issues that we can't lose on. We cannot afford to lose on taxes. We can't afford to lose on climate change. And so I don't care what else happens in this godforsaken country that we've now given over to Trump and the Republicans. I'm going to stay engaged to deal with those two issues. Now, I've been looking a little bit at some of the comments. It looks like I'm glad that I can provide conservatives with a hobby, since they apparently have nothing better to do with their life than watch people they supposedly hate and don't agree with and just comment over and over again. That's an interesting way to spend your day. Seems sad. Talk to your therapist. But for those of you who are actually interested in the future of this country, hopefully you've been commenting what the issues are that are going to keep you engaged. If Bernie has a rally 3 months from now, 6 months from now, 2 years from now, what are the issues that are going to bring you out to stay engaged, to not fall to apathy, to fight for your country and for the future of the country? These fucking people. I really don't understand it. There are a lot of great hobbies in this world, man. If you like guns, go shoot guns. Go to a gun range. Go do some hunting. Go hike. Talk to your family, man. Talk to a friend of yours that you haven't seen since high school. Man, people have some sad ways of spending their time. Anyway, that's what I'm engaged in. Bernie's going to be fighting for that. Hopefully we'll talk about it on the Young Turks. January 15th, the National Day of Rallies to protect healthcare from Trump and the Republicans. Hopefully you'll be out there. I will be out at the LA branch of it. Also, by the way, I have a video about this and a few other things that I'm uploading in the course of the next couple of hours on my personal YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/John Iadarola. I release mostly political vlogs and stuff like that, but other stuff as well. So if you're not already subscribed to that, go to youtube.com/John Iadarola and you'll see my content. Anyway, thanks for joining me, guys. I'll talk to you soon.